Matthew with Viking Off-Road, and today we're going to be installing a synthetic winch line on a 2008 Can-Am Outlander. The first step is going to be to unspool the steel cable. It's helpful to use some gloves. There may be some burrs or broken steel that you don't want to get in your hand. So if you haven't done so already, you're going to want to turn the handlebars to the right so that you gain access to the cavity where the winch is mounted on the mounting bracket to the chassis on the Outlander. You're going to want to do this both on the right and also on the left-hand side to remove the 4 bolts that are holding the winch in place and take off the 2 wire leads. So to do that, you're going to go ahead and remove the rubber guards that are in place. The next step is going to be to take a 7/16 inch end wrench and actually take off the nut on the top and the nut on the bottom. What that'll allow you to do is to take the 2 leads off. Then the next step is going to be to actually remove the bolts that are holding the winch in place. So to remove the 4 bolts, you're going to want to use a 1/4 inch hex wrench with a short neck on it. That will allow you to gain access to the bolts that are in fairly tight quarters. Once you've loosened them enough, you can unscrew them by hand. So at this point, you can actually slide the winch out. Now that you've removed all 4 bolts and slid the winch out, the next step is going to involve a pair of pliers, a screwdriver, and some safety glasses. And with the pair of safety glasses on, you're going to carefully take the screwdriver, walk the cable out, and once you've done that, you can actually take the pair of pliers and carefully nudge the cable out of its housing. Then you're going to go about attaching the synthetic line. So the setup we have here, we're actually not going to utilize the piece of hardware on the end. We're actually going to cut that off. After you've cut through that, you're going to go ahead and remove the heat shrink tubing and then take a piece of masking tape and apply that to the end. Now the finished product you're going to end up with is going to look like this. The last step really is changing of the fair lead. In this case, we're going to be using a new roller fair lead, and we're going to be installing that. You do have the option of using the Haas fair lead, but in this case we're going to be using the roller fair lead to make sure that we clear the rack mounted on the front of the HEV. So now that I've taken off the nuts on the back, it's really quite easy. Knock those out, drop them in, then go ahead reaching back on the inside, screw the nuts on. Now the tools you're going to need to do this is going to be a 5/16 inch Allen wrench. I've used a ratchet wrench in this case. And then I've used just a long socket arm to be able to reach to the back to tighten and loosen the nuts. After you've replaced the roller fair lead, at that point you can go ahead and feed your line through the roller fair lead, and then at that point we're actually going to attach it back onto the winch. But it's important that you feed the line through the fair lead prior to installing it on the winch, because you do have the finished safety thimble that is too large to fit through the roller fair lead in this case. Keep in mind, when attaching it to the winch, you want to make sure that you're feeding it underneath. So in other words, from front to back. You're going to go ahead and feed it up through, as you can see right there. And then at that point, you're going to take the line, you're actually going to double it back, as so. And then you're going to pull it down to tighten it. You can go ahead and cinch that tight. And at that point, you're actually ready to reinstall the winch using the connection Allen bolts that you originally took off. Put it on there. Once it's in place, then you're going to feed the line back in, making sure you're a good 3 to 4 feet away as you're feeding the line back in to make sure that you don't actually catch your fingers where the line is being fed back in. That's always just good practice to make sure that there's 3 or 4 feet between you and the feeding of that line into the winch. So when you're winching the line in, you want to make sure you're a good 3 or 4 feet away, ideally using maybe a universal remote extension. And then feed the line slowly back and forth. Now when you get to the end with the rope guard, just hold that in your hand as you did the rope. There you go. New synthetic winch line installed.